"Show me everything," Mountain Man demanded of his ashamed fat wife, his true motive. "Show me everything." The words echoed through the small church, chilling Evangeline Whitmore to the bone. The townspeople gasped. Whispers rippled like wind through wheat. They all turned to stare at her. The plump, nervous girl in a hand-me-down wedding dress, her cheeks flushed red with humiliation. To them, she wasn't a bride. She was a debt. Her father, Thomas Whitmore, stood at the altar, clutching his hat in trembling hands. "Mr. Riverstone saved my life in that mine collapse," he said, his voice cracking. "I promised to repay him in any way I could." Someone in the back snorted. "Guess he didn't want money. He wanted her." Laughter erupted. Ava's throat burned with shame. She wanted to disappear. All her life she had been the quiet, heavy girl people whispered about. Too soft, too slow, too much. And now she was being traded like cattle in front of them all. Then the church doors creaked open, and a gust of cold mountain air swept in. Nathaniel Riverstone stepped forward, tall, broad-shouldered, his hair the color of storm clouds. His coat was worn but clean, his eyes a piercing gray that seemed to see through every lie. The laughter died instantly. He didn't bow, didn't smile. He simply looked at Ava and said, in a low, steady voice that silenced the room, "I don't want your gold, Mr. Whitmore. I want honesty. From this day on, your daughter will show me everything, truth, pain, fear, hope, and in return, I'll give her a life no one can take from her." The crowd went silent. For the first time, Ava looked up, and that was the moment everything changed. The ceremony ended without music, without smiles. When the final prayer was whispered, the townsfolk filed out quickly, half curious, half afraid of the man they called the healer of the hills. Only the sound of boots on wood and the faint hiss of the wind filled the chapel. Ava stood frozen near the altar, clutching the wilted bouquet someone had forced into her hands. The petals trembled like her fingers. She couldn't meet Nathaniel's gaze. Everything about him, his height, his calmness, his silence, unsettled her. Outside, her father approached Nate, avoiding his eyes. "You've been a good man to me, Mr. Riverstone. I know she'll be useful to you up there." Ava's heart clenched. Useful. That's what she was now. Nathaniel said nothing for a long time. Then, finally, in a quiet but cutting tone, he replied, "I didn't ask for usefulness, Mr. Whitmore. I asked for commitment." He turned to Ava. "Do you have a coat?" She nodded quickly, voice caught in her throat. "Yes, sir." "Then let's go." No farewell, no blessing. Just a nod from her father and a silent departure. The wagon waited outside, a single horse pawing the frosty ground. Nathaniel lifted her small trunk into the back with one hand and helped her climb aboard without a word. As the wagon rolled out of town, Ava could feel the stares of every window following her. Mothers whispered to their daughters. Men smirked. A group of boys mimicked her walk, making pig sounds until Nathaniel glanced back once, just once, and they scattered like frightened birds. For miles, neither of them spoke. The dirt road wound upward through the trees, the air growing colder and cleaner the higher they climbed. Ava pulled her shawl tighter, sneaking glances at the man beside her. Nathaniel wasn't what she expected. His hands, though calloused, were steady and precise as he guided the reins. His jawline was strong, but his eyes, though cold, held a tired kindness. There was something about him that didn't fit the rumors. Finally, she found her courage. "Mr. Riverstone," she began softly, I don't understand why you wanted this marriage. Surely you could have married someone else? He finished for her, not unkindly. Someone slimmer, someone easier. Her cheeks flushed crimson. She turned away, blinking hard. Yes, she whispered. The corners of his mouth twitched, not in mockery, but in thought. Perhaps, he said quietly, but I wasn't looking for easy. I was looking for someone real. Ava didn't know how to respond. His words echoed in her chest long after they fell silent again. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in orange and violet, the wagon reached the edge of the wilderness. Before them stretched an endless forest. Tall pines whispering secrets to the wind, rivers gleaming like threads of silver. Somewhere within lay the cabin that would become her new home. She swallowed hard. Is it far? Nathaniel nodded. Far enough that no one will find us unless we wish them to. Something in his tone made her shiver, not from fear, but from the strange sense that maybe, just maybe, he was offering her something she had never known before. Freedom. The last thing she saw before darkness fell was the mountain itself, high, wild, and untamed, just like the man beside her. The forest swallowed them whole as the wagon creaked along the narrow trail. The deeper they went, the thicker the trees grew, until daylight itself seemed to fade into green twilight. Every snap of a branch, every cry of a distant bird made Ava flinch. Nathaniel seemed unaffected. He handled the reins with quiet precision, his gaze scanning the trail ahead. Occasionally, he'd point toward a plant growing by the roadside, foxglove, ginseng, wild mint, naming them in a low, thoughtful voice. Ava realized he wasn't just a hunter. He knew this land as if it breathed with him. They stopped near a small clearing as dusk fell. Nathaniel unhitched the horse and began setting up camp with practiced ease. Ava hesitated, unsure whether she should help or wait for instructions. "You can rest by the fire," he said without looking at her. "I'll handle the camp." "I can help," she murmured too softly. He looked up, one brow raised. "You know how to start a fire without matches." She shook her head. "Then tonight you'll learn." He handed her a flint and steel crouching beside her. His hands were steady as he demonstrated the motion, slow, deliberate strikes that sent sparks flying onto the kindling. When she tried, her first few attempts failed, but he didn't sigh or scold her. "Again," he said simply. Finally, a spark caught. The fire flared to life, its warmth washing over her face. She smiled despite herself. Nathaniel's lips twitched into what might have been approval. "Good," he said. "Now you can keep us warm if I ever freeze to death." It was the closest thing to a joke she'd heard from him. After supper, dried meat, bread, and the wild mint tea he brewed, Nathaniel sat sharpening his hunting knife, the firelight gleaming off the blade. Ava sat across from him, hugging her knees beneath her shawl. "Do you live alone?" she asked quietly. "For years. Don't you get lonely?" He paused, the knife resting on his knee. "The mountain doesn't make you lonely, Miss Whitmore. It makes you honest. It strips away the noise, the pretending. All that's left is what's real." She studied him for a moment, the flames flickering between them. "And what's real for you?" He met her eyes then, and she wished he hadn't. His gaze was too steady, too searching. "People I can trust," he said simply. "That's all I've ever needed." The next morning, they set out again. The trail grew steeper, the air sharper and colder. Ava's hands ached from gripping the wagon seat, and her legs trembled each time she climbed down to help push. Nathaniel noticed, though he said nothing. When she stumbled crossing a rocky stream, his hand shot out, gripping her wrist before she fell. "You need steadier boots," he muttered, pulling her back to balance. "I'm sorry," she whispered, embarrassed. "Don't apologize for learning." His tone was rough, but his touch was gentle when he brushed the mud from her sleeve. By the third day, the forest began to thin, opening to a high ridge where sunlight spilled through in long golden shafts. Below them stretched a valley blanketed in wildflowers and mist. In the distance, she could just make out a cabin with smoke curling from its chimney. "That's home," Nathaniel said quietly. "Home." The word made her chest ache. As the horse trotted down the last stretch, Ava couldn't help but ask, "What will you need me to do there?" He gave her a sidelong glance. "I'll show you when we arrive. For now, all I ask is that you listen, and that you trust me." The cabin door creaked as they stepped inside. The air smelled of pine resin and dried herbs. Shelves lined the walls, filled with jars of roots and powders, while a large wooden table sat in the center, covered in notebooks and old instruments. "This is my work," he said. "Everything I am is in this room." Ava swallowed. "And me?" He turned to her, his expression unreadable. "You're here to heal, whether you realize it or not." And for the first time, she wondered if maybe this mountain wasn't meant to imprison her, but to save her. The first morning in the cabin felt unreal. Ava woke to birdsong, the smell of pine smoke, and the faint clinking of glass jars somewhere nearby. The bed beneath her was soft but simple. A wool blanket, a hand-sewn quilt, and a small pillow that still held the warmth of sleep. She sat up slowly. The cabin's single window spilled sunlight across the floor, illuminating shelves of herbs hanging from the beams, lavender, sage, and bundles of rosemary that perfumed the air. From the adjoining room came the steady rhythm of movement, a chair scraping, a pestle grinding. She peeked through the doorway. Nathaniel was at his work table, sleeves rolled up, arms flexing as he crushed dried roots into powder. Steam rose from a kettle on the hearth beside him. He turned when he sensed her watching. "You're awake," he said, his voice low but even. "There's porridge on the stove. Eat before it cools." Ava hesitated, unused to such matter-of-fact kindness. "Thank you," she murmured, moving quietly toward the pot. He nodded toward a small wooden bowl already set out for her. "There's honey in the jar. Use what you like." The gesture startled her more than if he'd handed her gold. No one had ever told her to take what she liked before. As she ate, Nathaniel moved around the cabin with practiced precision. Every object had its place. Every motion had purpose. He wasn't a man of waste or excess. Even when he worked in silence, the room didn't feel empty. After breakfast, he handed her a woven basket. "We'll need new herbs by the stream. Can you walk half a mile?" "I think so." "Then dress warm. The air's colder near the water." The walk was slow but beautiful. Mist drifted between the trees, and sunlight shimmered on every droplet. Nathaniel moved easily through the terrain, stopping now and then to kneel and point out plants. "This one's comfrey, good for bruises. That one, goldenrod, for the lungs." Ava tried to memorize each one, her fingers brushing over the soft leaves. "How did you learn all this?" she asked. "My mother," he said simply. "She was a healer. She taught me the names of things before I could read." said knowing what can kill and what can cure was the difference between living and dying. He paused, cutting a root cleanly with his knife. She was right. Back at the cabin, Nathaniel showed her how to hang herbs properly, roots downward, in bundles no thicker than a hand. If they dry too close, he explained, they mold. If they hang too loose, they lose their strength. Ava listened carefully, hand steady as she tied the string. The quiet between them was comfortable now, filled with the soft rustle of herbs and the creak of drying wood. That evening she cooked for the first time a simple vegetable stew. When she nervously set it before him, he tasted it without expression. For a moment she thought she'd failed. Then he nodded once. "It's good." The single word lit her up inside like a sunrise. Over the next weeks, their days fell into rhythm. They worked side by side, collecting, mixing, preparing medicines for the people who sometimes traveled days just to find Nathaniel's cabin. Ava helped tend to cuts, fevers, and burns, learning how to mix poultices and brew tonics. Her confidence grew with every task he trusted her with. And slowly, she began to notice the smaller things. The way Nathaniel always poured her tea before his own. The way he covered her basket with a cloth so her hands wouldn't get cold. The way he looked at her, not with pity, but with quiet attention. One night, as snow fell softly outside, they sat by the fire after a long day tending to a sick child from the valley. Ava stitched a torn glove while Nathaniel polished his hunting knife. "You work too hard," he said without looking up. She smiled faintly. "So do you." He glanced at her then, his expression gentler than she'd ever seen. "Maybe, but some things are worth the effort." The air between them shifted, not sharp, not awkward, just warm. Ava felt her heartbeat stumble, then steady again. When she stood to pour them both more tea, her sleeve brushed his arm. The contact was brief, accidental, but it lingered in her mind long after. That night, as she lay awake beneath her quilt, she listened to the soft wind outside and thought, maybe this is what safety feels like. For the first time since she left the town, she didn't dream of escape. She dreamed of belonging. Winter settled hard and silent across the mountains. The cabin, once golden with light and herbs, now stood wrapped in snow. Inside, Ava and Nathaniel worked through the long, cold days, grinding roots, stirring tinctures, tending the fire that never seemed to rest. They had grown used to one another. He no longer spoke in commands, and she no longer waited for permission to breathe. The quiet between them had turned from tension into something gentler, the rhythm of two people moving in unspoken harmony. But peace has a way of drawing shadows out of hiding. It began with a knock, harsh, sharp, unwelcome. Nathaniel opened the door to find a man standing in the snow, tall, dressed in a fine coat and city boots caked with ice. He carried a leather satchel and the smug smile of someone who thought the world owed him everything. "Mr. Riverstone," the man said, brushing off his hat. "My name's Avery Whitmore. I'm here on family business." Ava froze. Avery, her older brother, the last person she wanted to see. Nathaniel's expression didn't change. "Come in before you freeze," he said simply. Avery stepped inside, eyes sweeping the cabin, landing on Eva. "Well," he said with a smirk, "looks like Father's little bargain worked out after all. I heard you were still alive, though I can't imagine why." "Avery?" Ava whispered, voice trembling. "Why are you here?" He opened his satchel and pulled out a folded document. "To finish what Father started. The land you're sitting on, it's ours. At least, it was until your mountain man here decided to plant his roots where they didn't belong." Nathaniel's gaze hardened. "This land was given to me by the council after the flood. Legally?" Avery laughed. "Legally? You think paper means anything in a place like this? The council's broke. My family still holds the deed, and if you want to keep it, you'll pay." Ava stepped forward, voice shaking but steady. "We have nothing to pay you with." Avery's eyes glinted cruelly. "You? No, but your husband does. I've seen his tinctures in town. People whisper he's selling medicine for gold." Nathaniel said nothing. The silence was dangerous, like the still air before a storm. When Avery left that night, his words lingered like frost. "You've got a month, Riverstone. After that, I come back with the sheriff." After the door shut, Ava sank into a chair, her face pale. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I swear I didn't know they'd try to take from you." Nathaniel set his knife down on the table. "It's not your fault." "But it is," she said, tears breaking free. "I was the debt they used, and now they'll ruin you because of me." He knelt beside her then, one hand steadying her trembling fingers. "Ava," he said quietly, "I didn't bring you here to pay anything. I brought you here because I saw something the rest of them didn't. Someone who cared more about others than herself. I won't let them make you feel small again." His words steadied her, but fear still coiled tight in her chest. She had seen what her family was capable of. Avery was his father's son, ruthless, greedy, relentless. Over the next few days, Nathaniel grew distant, spending hours outside, reinforcing the fences, stacking firewood, and cleaning his rifle. Ava knew what it meant. Even if he didn't say it aloud, he was preparing for a fight. One night, as the snow thickened against the windows, she found him standing at the forge, hammering metal in silence. Sparks lit the darkness around him like stars. "What are you making?" she asked softly. He didn't look up. "A lock, stronger than the last one." Her throat tightened. "You think they'll really come back?" He finally raised his eyes to hers, calm, steady, unyielding. "They will. Men like your brother don't give up what they think belongs to them." "And if he brings the sheriff?" "Then I'll show them the truth, that you're not theirs to own." For the first time since she arrived, Ava realized how much he meant it. Not just the words, the vow behind them. The snow had barely melted when the sound of hooves shattered the mountain stillness. Nathaniel was already on the porch when Ava joined him, her breath fogging in the cold air. Down the path, two riders approached, Avery at the front, grinning like a man walking into his victory, and behind him, Sheriff Dunn, a thick-bodied man with a star pinned crookedly to his coat. "Morning, Riverstone," Avery called out, his voice carrying up the slope. "I came to collect what's mine." Nathaniel's face was calm, but his stance had changed. Shoulders square, eyes steady, every inch the man who'd built this life with his own hands. "You're trespassing," he said evenly. Avery dismounted, throwing the reins aside. "You married into debt, mountain man, and debts don't vanish just because you hide in the woods." He turned toward Ava then, his expression dripping with disdain. "You should have stayed home, sister. You never belonged in a place like this." Ava's stomach twisted, but Nathaniel's hand brushed hers, a quiet, grounding touch that silenced her trembling. "Get off my land," Nathaniel said again, his voice lower now, colder. Sheriff Dunn stepped forward, one hand resting lazily on his gun belt. "Let's keep this civil, Riverstone. Mr. Whitmore's got documents saying this land's his family's property. You got proof otherwise?" Nathaniel didn't move. "Inside, on the mantel, but you won't be needing it." Avery laughed. Big words for a man with nothing. That was when Ava stepped forward. Her heart thundered, but she spoke before she could lose courage. "He has me, Avery, and I'm not a debt. I'm not something you trade or sell." Her brother blinked in surprise. He'd never heard her raise her voice. Ava continued, each word stronger than the last. "Father made his choice when he gave me away, and I made mine when I stayed. This land is my home now. Nathaniel didn't take anything from us. He gave me a life that you and Father never could, one built on respect, not ownership." Nathaniel glanced at her then, pride flickering like firelight in his eyes. Sheriff Dunn looked uncomfortable. "Well, the lady's got a point. Marriage is legal, and if her name's on that deed, I don't see a case here." Avery's smirk faltered. "You can't—" "I can," the sheriff interrupted, shifting in his saddle, "and I say this is settled." For a long, silent moment, Avery stared at them both, at his sister standing tall beside the man he'd tried to humiliate. His lips curled, but there was no power left in his sneer. "You'll regret this," he spat, turning on his heel. "Maybe," Nathaniel said quietly, "but it won't be today." They watched as the riders disappeared into the trees. The moment the last hoofbeat faded, Ava turned to Nathaniel, her body shaking from the release of everything she'd been holding in. He stepped forward and pulled her close, his hand resting against the back of her head. "You did more than I ever could," he murmured. "You stood your ground." Ava looked up at him, tears glistening in her eyes. "I learned from you." He smiled, a rare, soft smile that broke the quiet mountain cold. "No, Eva, you just finally remembered who you were." Outside, the snow began to fall again, covering the footprints that led down the hill, erasing the last trace of those who tried to claim what was never theirs. Inside the cabin, the fire burned bright. Weeks passed, and winter began to fade. The snow retreated down the slopes, revealing patches of green that promised spring. Life in the cabin slowly returned to its gentle rhythm, the soft crackle of the fire, the scent of drying herbs, and the sound of Ava's quiet laughter echoing between the wooden walls. The confrontation had changed something between them, not just in how they spoke, but in how they stood. Ava no longer flinched when the world pressed close. She walked with her head high now, shoulders back, eyes bright with quiet purpose. Nathaniel watched her sometimes as she worked, measuring herbs or stirring tea, her hand steady, her smile real. He'd built this cabin with his own hands, but she had filled it with life. One evening, as the last light of dusk slipped through the window, Ava sat by the fire, mending a torn shirt. Nathaniel came in from outside, his coat dusted with sawdust, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "It's almost planting season," he said. "I thought we might add a new bed for lavender." Ava looked up, surprised. "Lavender?" He nodded. "You said once that the scent made you feel safe." Her heart tightened, not with fear this time, but with warmth. "Yes," she whispered, "safe and home." He crossed the room, kneeling beside her. "Then that's what we'll grow more of." For a long moment, neither spoke. The fire crackled softly, casting golden light over their faces. Then Nathaniel took her hand, rough from work, but gentle as always, and said quietly, "You're safe here, Ava, truly safe." Tears welled in her eyes as she whispered back, "I know." Outside, the wind sighed through the pines, carrying the scent of the coming spring, a promise that life, like love, could bloom even in the harshest places. Every time I see your comments, I'm reminded how stories like this connect us across miles, languages, and lives. Ava's journey wasn't just about finding love. It was about finding worth in a world that once told her she had none. If you're listening right now, maybe from a quiet room or a busy city, I hope this story reminded you that kindness and courage still build the strongest homes. Tell me, where in the world are you listening from tonight? And if you still believe in love that heals instead of hurts, stay. The next story is already waiting for you.